Hello, welcome to Sussex Global UK podcast, episode 6. Today's topic is on coercive control. First of all, just want to make it clear, I am not saying criminal activity in relation to the coerced control is the template for legal response to the type of activity that has been directed at Prince Harry and the Duchess of Sussex for the past 5 years. What I am saying is that under the basic tenet of human rights legislation, there are many categories of law that run parallel to what is going on with the Sussexes, and where action has been taken against people who are not considered powerful or wealthy. Yet, when it comes to people in powerful positions and who have senior professional posts in the business or legal world, or who are considered as influencers in certain areas of business or politics, then the world appears to turn a blind eye until things become so serious, or what was once hidden comes to light. The powers that be are then forced to respond in some way, even if it is decades too late for the victims of those activities. When you hear me talk about and give examples of, and I use words like partner, ex-partner, spouse, etc., with all those groups of people who have abused the Sussexes, if you replace their categories and names in the space of partner, ex-partner, and so on, you will see what I'm getting at. So, for example, abusers in my eyes include the royal family, the tabloid press, royal reporters, government by their silence are complicit, keyboard warriors, the hillbilly clan headed up by the Sperm Donor. They are all behaving like an ex-partner who refuses to accept that the marriage is over, and are now becoming dangerously obsessed with pursuing them and putting their lives at risk. If, on the rare occasion, the abusers are powerful and or wealthy, and their victims are in a similar category, there seems to be a position taken that say to anyone caring to watch that it is best to let them sort it out between themselves. No need for us to be interested. It is just rich folk doing their thing. If the victim is a person of colour, then it seems to matter even less. The view seems to be the victim has the financial means to pay for multiple legal actions and can move home several times in order to try and remain safe, can afford to pay for top-class security teams, etc., etc. Everyone knows deep down, if the perpetrators were people of colour, it would rarely take decades for legal professionals to step in. If the victims are poor Caucasian and their abusers are wealthy and powerful, etc., no one is interested until the abusers have long since passed on. The basic aspect of everyone is entitled to protection under the law seems to be pushed to one side. The danger with that is that victims are left to suffer, and if the abuse continues for years, the cost to the individuals concerned is more than financial, and therefore the countries and the authorities concerned are left with much more than financial things to worry about. Damaged children become damaged adults. In all cases, key adults failed to recognise their need for help and turned a blind eye. I have quoted this example previously, but in the case of USA athletics, children were being abused physically and psychologically over a 40-year period by one adult, an adult in a senior position, and his activities were known by other adults who did nothing. The children reported incidents, and still nothing happened. Those children are now adults. I have given a link in this article and that accompanies the podcast of a clip on YouTube of an awards ceremony, and it was an award for women who had survived abuse of various kinds within the USA gymnastics world. It was on, I think it was ESPN, and it was an Arthur Ashe Award for Courage. It's very, very moving, and there are a number of documentaries around that situation and that awards ceremony and the people involved. It is heartbreaking, and it runs in very similar terms, parallel to things that have gone on within the royal family, and at the moment, as we know, they are pursuing Harry and Meghan. They being groups of adults whose behaviour is abusive. In some cases, it is criminal, and they are being allowed to carry on doing what they're doing, hiding behind a number of fake reasons, rationale for those actions. There are many, many cases like this, and have gone on for decades. The reason that Harry and Meghan has become high profile is because of their positions, but the actions that are going on and have been going on are abusive. And that's what I'm exploring with my approach to these podcasts, my approach in terms of human rights, and in this particular podcast, I'm looking at one aspect of abuse about coercive control. As someone who has worked with women's groups for many years, including survivors of various forms of abuse, my antenna goes up when I feel that someone is being abused, in whatever form, and is being maligned because they are prepared to speak their truth. Another example, which is ongoing at the moment, relates to Britney Spears. Another situation which has been going on for over a decade and whose voice was ignored in favour of family members who used her money to pay for legal experts to ensure that Britney had no voice, but the abusers continued to profit from her continual earnings for their benefit, not Britney. There's a quote from the CEO of Refuge, Sandra Hawley, which I think is applicable here. Abusive men are just as likely to be lawyers, accountants and judges as they are to be unemployed. It is about power and control. End of quote. And as Sandra Hawley made clear in the article where I got that from, it's men or women. It just happens to be that I use men in that quotation, but she does say herself it can be either gender. Those of you who know my work and publications know that I like to use academic theory and models to help show how many topics can be explained in a user-friendly way. I regard the treatment of Meghan and Harry, Meghan in particular, like that of a person in a violent marriage. The abuser continually trying to erode the self-esteem of their victim and telling them how they could be nothing without them, etc., and to put fear in their minds about leaving. When that victim manages to escape, the abuser then goes on the defensive, trying to justify their actions, and ultimately try to make life so difficult outside of the marital home that the victim returns and becomes compliant. And in fact, inevitably, the level of abuse is worse than before. I've also used the Kubler-Ross 7 stages of grief model in the past to show how the British royal family, the royal reporters working for the tabloids, but who have an invisible contract with the monarchy, to always give them positive press coverage in return to access to the roles for exclusive scoops, etc. I include government in the analogy, aristocracy and keyboard warriors in the frame. It is a very useful model for a number of things. I highly recommend you look it up. And if you have the time, to read one of my articles which maps categories from the model to particular antics of the above groups. I say that as just giving a little background for new subscribers, new listeners to my podcast and articles. Today's podcast, as I said, is using the framework of coercive control and how it can apply to describing what has been and continues to be done against Harry and Meghan. Experts have thus often used the non-injury model of coercive control to explain the dynamics of intimate partner violence. In this case, replace that with royal family and so on, and the other groups that I've mentioned. The term was first popularised in 2007 by the work of Dr. Evan Stark, who described coercive control as a pattern through which abusive partners, typically males, employ combinations of violence, intimidation, isolation, humiliation, and control. I list reference material and websites at the end of the article that goes with this podcast to help you on a journey of discovery of some of these topics. I try to give you a user-friendly starting point. There is a category of post-separation control. This is a form of abuse that a male ex-partner uses to maintain power and control over a woman, long after the marriage or relationship is over. Gender can be either. Think of all the groups I have mentioned, particularly the royal family, and its partners in the media, behaving as though they are trying to keep control over what Harry and Meghan do in life, still desperately trying to cling on to power over their actions. The British royal family never once anticipated that Harry would leave with his family. The aim was clearly to destroy Meghan in any way it panned out, and if she remained alive, she would get up and walk away. No one thought that Harry would leave too. The next step was to take away their security and to reveal their location in Canada and then again in the USA, which was Tyler Perry's property. Prince Charles was responsible for the security leak and the details of their location, along with stopping funding early on in the 12-month transition period that the royal family themselves insisted on having in the first place. Charles was willing to place his own son in danger in an effort to force him home and to secure more years for the monarchy. They would never risk the life to the heir to the throne, but the spare was expendable. What a family. The irony of a black man from an industry that the UK constantly maligns as of no importance stepped forward and provided security and a home for the Sussexes, and sent a private plane to collect the Sussex family from Canada and take them to the LA property. It's not wasted on me. Gives me joy every time I think about it. God bless Tyler Perry, an angel on this earth. Often, when the abuser is in positions of power, the abuse is not physical, not least because the potential for reputational damage. The control is often psychological and emotional terrorism, which is harder to prove. One example, control tactics using the legal system to repeatedly drag women through expensive litigation or launching a defamation campaign in an attempt to silence or discredit the victim and to preserve the reputation of the abusers. Think here of Meghan and her treatment by the royal family and the media in particular. All of those tactics are clear to see when you stand back and make comparisons with those proven academic models I am quoting, and what has been happening to the Sussexes. Note, there is civil and criminal law already in place to deal with coercive control. And with my non-legal mind, I fail to see how it can be too far a step to take to apply the law after 5 years of abusive activity in various forms. Never forget that Megan had suicidal thoughts when she was pregnant with Archie. We nearly had a second death in the royal family under questionable circumstances and with clear evidence of various strands of activity which was put in place to drive Megan out of the family by any means. Stonewalling, gaslighting and threats of legal action are all part of an abuser's repertoire. They employ these and other tactics to retain power and control to ensure that you are prevented from exposing them. Note, think here of the royal family again and the media. Remember their behaviour before the Oprah interview even came out. And they are doing the same now about a book that is still being written and will not be published until over 12 months' time. Only people who are guilty of less than good behaviour would be worried about a TV interview yet to air or a book yet to be published. The two groups doing the most protesting, hiding behind other labels, are the family and its media. Speaks volumes to me, and is all part of trying to desperately cling on to the control and the narrative using a decades-old playbook which is no match for the astute minds of the Sussexes, exhausting as it must be for Harry and Meghan. I repeat, what are legal minds doing? What has to occur for a trigger to move to action mode? Let's have a look at the Women's Aid organisation and some of the things that they say about controlling behaviour. Controlling behaviour is designed to make a person dependent by isolating them from support, exploiting them, depriving them of independence, and regulating their everyday behaviour. Think here how Meghan was asked to make herself less visible. Think here how Meghan was asked to be 50% of herself. Think here how Meghan's passport and ID, credit cards, car keys, etc. were kept by HR, which meant she would have to ask for them if needed. They would know her every move. And by the way, retention of one's passport is not a legal requirement by any organisation or employer. Name removed from Archie's birth certificate. Only the Duchess of Sussex title remains. Harry's full name and title is still there. All other royal wives have their name and title on their child's birth certificates. Only Meghan has had hers removed. Meghan stayed in Frogmore Cottage once for 40 days without leaving it once, and still someone commented from within the family that she appeared too soon. She was not allowed to see friends without courtiers or equivalent being in the same room. Serena Williams confirmed this detail subsequently. Let's explore the topics of domestic abuse, including coercive control and harassment. Look at financial abuse too. My list of references are just a starting point. There are multiple sites out there, and all will tell you that laws exist for the prosecution of the abusers, no matter who they are. Many grassroots organisations worked hard to ensure that coercive control became a criminal offence. This has marked a huge step forward in tackling domestic abuse. Now it is important to make sure that everyone understands what it is. Coercive control creates invisible chains and a sense of fear that pervades all elements of a victim's life. It works to limit their human rights by depriving them of their liberty and reducing their ability for action. Experts like Evan Stark liken coercive control to being taken hostage. As he says, the victim becomes captive in an unreal world created by the abuser, entrapped in a world of confusion, contradiction and fear. An extract from someone called Laura Richards, and I've given quite a lot of detail about her and the wonderful work that she has done and is continuing to do. I've given details of hers in the references I've listed in the article. I can see a number of experiences of things that have been done that we know of to Megan whilst on UK soil and Canada and now in Sussexes' home in Montecito. Her site I highly recommend. Very useful site with lots of resource material and information. Here is one extract. A number of feminist psychologists in the 1970s identified the domestic abuse victims that they worked with as living like hostages and coined the term coercive control. This dangerous form of abuse relies on a range of behaviours or actions that can be very subtle and nuanced. The intention is to exploit and dominate and to ultimately deprive the victim of their most basic rights and needs. Over time, the victim may lose the very essence of being, the sense of who they are, their likes and dislikes, rendering their needs and desires irrelevant. Hence, hostage-taking and living under an enforced regime. In the UK, the government has developed a definition of coercive and controlling behaviour. I have to say I was very surprised to discover this because there's been no evidence of that I've noticed over the years, but officially they have things in place, legal measures in place that I don't know who they use them for, because they certainly don't do it for this high-profile case. But anyway, the theory. Overview of cross-government definitions from the Home Office in 2015. Control. Controlling behaviour is a range of acts designed to make a person subordinate and or dependent by isolating them from sources of support, exploiting their resources and capacities for personal gain, depriving them of the means needed for independence, resistance and escape, and regulating their everyday behaviour. Coercion. Coercive behaviour is a continuing act of or a pattern and acts of assault, threats, humiliation and intimidation, or often abuse that is used to harm, punish or frighten their victim. If you look at the situation when Meghan married into the royal family in the UK, there was no financial provision made for her. None. Harry was told that maybe Meghan should return to acting to bring in an income. Meghan was sent on various royal assignments, including taking on charities, her patronages, and more than delivered in each one. Travelled abroad whilst heavily pregnant with Archie at one point. And all done whilst paying for her own attire and people to help with that, though most of the time she did not have stylists on hand other than her friend Jessica Mulroney. Media continued to report on the cost of her clothing, implying that taxpayers' money was footing the bill, whilst knowing all that time Meghan was paying for everything herself. Meghan commissioned clothes and footwear from designers in the countries that she visited, all at her own expense. Yet, when she needed medical intervention, the British royal family refused, stating that she was not an employee, and that apart from anything else, it would look bad on the royal family. Really? As if you haven't got one or two things, at the very least, that you should be concerned about, and makes you look more than bad. It seems it was not deemed that Meghan was family either, because I am certain all other members of that family would have access to any kind of medical intervention. As it was, a friend of Princess Diana was contacted by the Spencer family to assist Meghan. I sincerely hope that Harry does talk about the impact of the abuse behind the gilded gates on his wife and family in his memoirs to be published next year. I doubt he will say very much about family members, but I am hopeful that that will happen in the future. I hope that he talks about acts and the complicity of a number of organisations and individuals in the now obvious effort to prevent the marriage of Harry and Meghan, and then, having failed at that, went out of their way to try and destroy Meghan's character, and when that failed, went out of their way to destroy her mental health. I do, however, want him to talk about the severe and traumatic impact of the cruelty of actions by the royal family, usually by using other vessels to carry out their deeds, actions which continue now on USA soil by perpetrators based elsewhere. Not to mention the abject cruelty around the creation of spares in the royal family and the child protection services needed around that whole ideology. Whilst on the subject of books written by, or in most cases, written by royal reporters in the style and with the content approved by whichever member of the royal family commissioned it in the first place, the said royal receives favourable media coverage and the reporter earns an extra income for their style of content. No fuss or outrage until Harry decides to write one of his own. His crime? He did not ask any of the royal reporters cabal to write it for him. No income for them, but freedom of expression for Harry, who is no longer a senior working royal. We must not forget that the Sussexes offered to work for the monarchy for 50% of their time for free. That offer was turned down. So, here we are, with Sussexes already global icons, with a foundation which has secured huge financial deals, and in so doing has allowed Harry and Meghan to have self-financing income streams, as well as set up and fund a wide range of humanitarian projects around the world, all in their first year of independence. It is safe to say that their success has not gone down well, as all the key abusers wanted the Sussexes, well, Harry at least, begging to be let back into the fold, as opposed to residing in a tent under a bridge somewhere. Harry's memoir is not even published yet, but the level of outrage and vitriol is embarrassing for all those complaining. Just to put this outrage over one book into sensible context, on Amazon alone, there are 738 UK royal biographies. There are other categories pertaining to UK royals, as well as at 738. At no point was there any outrage. None of the royal reporters had anything negative to say about any of them. True to form, however, anything that Harry or Meghan produce, they are treated like traitors. One can't help but think that only people who may have done undesirable things or know about undesirable things done by others within palace walls would be having apoplexy about a book that has not yet been published, and won't be for at least another year. All it has done has garnered global attention and guaranteed even higher sales. Purely because now even more people worldwide are beginning to speculate what on earth did actually happen behind palace walls. As per usual, the propaganda team of the royal family gave themselves away within hours of the announcement of this forthcoming book, just like they did for a whole week before the Oprah interview with the Sussexes. 95% of what the royal reporters were blowing gaskets over for 7 days beforehand were not mentioned in the interview at all, but immediately provided further receipts for the Sussexes. Karma in motion. The Sussexes are living proof Diana was not so fortunate of what happens when anyone expresses independent thought. Slave and master mentality is living and breathing within the royal cult that is funded by UK taxpayers. This has to stop. It is like a bounty has been placed on the heads of USA citizens, and the world is watching because it involves wealthy people. If it was a wealthy black family doing all of this, it would not be still ongoing now, 5 years down the line. I think that this extract coming up relating to new legislation approved in the state of California on the 29th of September 2020 is very useful in the current climate surrounding the Sussexes. I have to keep reminding people that I am not legally trained, but from all the research I have done over the years, with mainly women's groups and an element of personal experience, the treatment behind gilded gates, or by groups who act as associates of the people behind those gates, who in turn have hired people themselves to carry out certain activities against Sussexes, has gone way beyond a family asking for a family member to return back to the fold without his wife and children. Years down the line, it has moved into a range of illegal activity, and no one yet has come forward to call it what it is. Coercive control is one of the often unseen elements of the abuse and harassment of the only person of colour to enter the UK royal family. The sheer volume of race-hating, inciting bile written in scores of articles every single day in the UK is in itself a crime. The Sussexes have not been afforded their basic human rights, and to date have had no protection under the law in terms of human rights legislation at a national or international level. After 5 years of such activity, with no action taken to prevent the flow of hate and increase risk to the Sussex family, it is safe to say that only the international legal community can take the lead on this now, with support of the USA. Hopefully in conjunction with the USA. The law exists for a reason. International laws exist for a reason. If not, just disband all the international organisations who on paper have the power to intervene. Or is it that they only intervene on less wealthy people's behalf? Or regimes who are abusive and who are also people of colour? I have zero faith in the UK legal bodies who have chosen to protect themselves rather than take on the establishment. If the international bodies are the same, then let's all shut up shop and go home, and let the revolution begin, and natural selection take out those who are not popular, Let's recreate Mad Max, or The Matrix, or The Hunger Games in the modern age. I shake my head. I'm going to end this podcast with lyrics from a song that was written for and about survivors of abuse. I still have elements of belief and faith that action will be taken against abusers. The law is there and it should be used. This song is one of many from Selena Gomez. Just to say, there's a whole album on about survivors, and it is absolutely brilliant, in my opinion, just because of, I said, the work that I've done. This is one of my personal favourites, and the song title is aptly called Rise. You can stand beside the madness like a falling tear. You can hold on to the sadness like a souvenir. Or you can close your eyes and see your life like the air. You can tap into the strength you never knew you had. You can breathe into your faith no matter where you're at. Just close your eyes and change your life like the air. Like the air, you can rise from the rubble with your mind. You can hover, you can rise like the tide, like the heat it is in the summer. Yes, I know there are those who will want to bring you down. But you can rise with your mind and make your higher power proud. You can rise like the air, you can rise. The earth can pull you down with all its gravity, and the measure of your worth is sometimes hard to see. So just hold on. When the night is done, like the sun, like the air, you can rise from the rubble with your mind. You can hover. You can rise like the tide, like the heat it is in the summer. Yes, I know there are those who will want to bring you down. But you can rise with your mind and make your higher power proud. You can rise like the air. You can rise. So, even when your bones feel like weights and it's hard to lift the smile on your perfect face, you can still find a peaceful place. Close your eyes until you're floating up in outer space. It'll be all right. They're just jealous of your highs, so they can knock you down. But like the air, you can rise from the rubble with your mind. You can hover. You can rise like the tide, like the heat in the summer. Yes, I know there are those who will want to bring you down. But you can rise with your mind and make your higher power proud. You can rise like the air, you can rise. Like the air, you can rise. That's the end of episode 6 of the podcast of Sussex Global. I hope you found it interesting. I really hope that you have a look at the article and explore some or all of the websites and books that I list as reference material as a starting point. If you do have an interest in this and you start to look, believe me, you will go down so many avenues, all of which are interesting. Some of it is heartbreaking, but there is more uplifting information of people who have come out the other side. I believe that Harry and Meghan have done just that. They have risen above it all, despite what has been thrown at them. But I do believe that justice should be done. I do believe that people should be held accountable for what they write and what they say, and stop hiding behind excuses that it's their job, their reporters or their TV presenters or whatever masquerade that they want to claim on a day-to-day basis. The fact remains, it incites hatred and increases the risks to Harry and Meghan. The fact that this couple have left the UK and the swarm of hatred and behaviour and antics has followed them. It may be done electronically, it may be done, by using third parties to go out and do various unsavoury things on USA soil. I firmly believe that the international legal bodies now are left wanting on this. It's overdue for action, and I sincerely hope that the USA, having just passed legislation on coercive control as one example, less than 6 months ago, time now for action. And if you can't do it on your own within the USA, then by all means liaise with the international communities, because whatever is happening to the Sussexes, in particular Meghan, is happening to lots of people worldwide who haven't the resources to raise a flag and say help. But you can help. There are organisations out there to help. And why not start with a high-profile couple who have 5 years of evidence for you? And as mentioned in my last podcast, the FBI is using some of the models I've been quoting. And if they find them useful, I don't see why legal minds can't do the same. So, hope you found this interesting. Hope it didn't bore you, because it is a difficult and can be seen as a dry subject. And I'm still learning this art, by the way, of podcasting. But I hope you found it interesting. I hope you explore it further. And until the next time, speak to you soon. Bye from Ivy.